Hi, it's Mrs. Martello. I wanted to talk a little bit more about 3.5 example 4. So in this example, we showed our work of how to get this equation into y equals mx plus b form. And then once it was in y equals mx plus b form, we found the slope, we found the y-intercept, and then we graphed it. So when we graph it by hand, we start by plotting the y-intercept here at 0, 2. And then we use our slope. Since our slope was -2, we always want to use it as rise over run. So we went down to right 1. Remember, any number can always be over 1. So from this point here, we're going down to right 1. In the book, they like to go right 1, down 2, but it doesn't matter as long as you do the same idea. I want to show you that you can also graph this using an online graphing tool or a graphing calculator. I personally have a TI-83 Plus. It's an old calculator that I've had since high school, but a Texas Instrument is what TI stands for. A TI-84 or TI-84 Plus is a good calculator to have, but you do not need to purchase that for this class. I'm going to show you an online version. So I'm going to go to Desmos.com. So that's the website here, Desmos.com. There's also an app that you can download on your phone so you can have access to a free graphing calculator whenever you need it. So when you enter Desmos.com, we want to use the graphing calculator tool. So I'm going to enter into this graphing calculator. And in here, we can type in the equation that we want to graph. So just a quick remind you, our equation in slope-intercept form was y equals -2x plus 2. So let's go back to Desmos. Let's type that in. Y equals -2x plus 2. And there we have it. There's our graph. Look at how this line looks on the coordinate plane. And let's go back to the book. Look at how it looks here in the book. It's exactly the same line. So using Desmos is a really nice tool to check to make sure that you can graph it. I just want to play around with this graph a little bit. Let's see what happens if I change some of these numbers. What happens if I don't have a plus 2? Look at what happened to the line. It just moved, so the y-intercept was here at 0. Before, the y-intercept was up at 2, and without it, the y-intercept becomes 0 because that's the same thing as saying plus 0. So this y-intercept here can shift this line up and down. Let's see what happens if I make it negative. What if I made it -5? Now look at where the y-intercept is. It's down here at -5. So the y-intercept is just going to shift this line up or down. Okay, I'm going to put it back to where it was, plus 2. Let's look at the line. What happens when I change the slope of the line? Right now, our slope is -2. Let's see what happens if I make the slope -1. Do you see how the line gets less steep? So the bigger the number, the steeper the slope. Let's see if I make this slope 5, -5. Look at how steep this slope is. It's a very, very steep slope. Now remember, this is a negative slope, and that's why it's going down from left to right. If it were a positive slope, then it would be going up from left to right because now it would be increasing. So the number that's in front of the variable, the slope, changes the steepness of the line. And the sign of the slope tells us if the line is increasing or if the line is decreasing. So I'm just going back to how it originally was. That's one thing I wanted to show you is how to change and play around with the slope and the y-intercept and how that affects the graph. I also want to show you that Desmos is a really nice tool that you actually don't need to write the equation in y equals mx plus b form to graph it. You can actually graph it right from the original form. So I'm going to take this equation and plug it into Desmos. So let's see what happens. 2x plus y equals 2. So let's type that in here. 2x plus y equals 2. And look at that. We ended up getting the same exact line that's here. Desmos is nice in that way where you do not have to have your equation in y equals mx plus b. However, if you have a graphing calculator that you're using, it does need to be in y equals mx plus b. So that's up to you. You can use Desmos, you can use your graphing calculator, or you can graph by hand.